You're tuned into the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Zeno Pucks. Here are your hosts, Andy and Brian Matusi.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the two lying brothers who don't know what a schedule is podcast. I'm Brian Matusi with Andy Matusi. And remember that show we were going to do 2 weeks ago and then we never did?
Dude, if there's one thing we're good at, it's dropping the ball.
Not following a schedule. Yeah. And then not following up on social media and just being complete dirtbags. So if you're still here, thank you. And
if you're not,
I don't blame you. Yes. But this is indeed the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast, presented as always by Zeno Pucks. We are glad to be back. I am glad to be officially moved into Ohio with my wife. I want to give a big shout out to you and your wife for assisting us with our move. Your wife went to work finding a bunch of apartments and places for us to check out. And we ended up moving into one of the places she found online for us. And then you generously flew out to Wisconsin and drove our moving truck here. And so now that we're all moved in, I can A, finally sleep, and B, we can finally do this show without any kind of interruptions for the very foreseeable future.
And now you live 10 minutes away from me, and we're still not doing this fucking show in person. So here we are.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. I could have today, but you didn't invite me to your house, you know, like a bad brother would.
Yep, that's me.
So
I would also like to apologize in advance. I'm probably gonna, not that I ever sound great, but I'm gonna sound like shit this episode because I've had some congestion going on the last like 4 days, and I was also yelling at the top of my lungs at the Monsters game last night. So
was I, about 5 seats away from you.
Yeah,
4 seats away. Well, we were in the row in front and 3 to the right or whatever.
So I'm gonna sound like shit for today.
That's okay.
That's
we had fun, even though they didn't win that game. But
that was a damn good game, though, man. That was a great game. So we saw some really good goaltending too. I just also saw some really shitty goaltending, but Jack Reeves made a phenomenal stop last night. That whole game it kept you on the edge of your seat, so it was well worth it.
Yeah, it was a good time. About 15,000 people there. It was a good game to go to.
Yep. And
then later this week, we're going to the Blue Jackets versus Islanders game at Nationwide Arena. So that'll be fun. Yep. And then Saturday night, you and I are going to the Monsters game again. So
yeah, dude, now that we live by each other, it's just
time
to absolutely overdose on hockey.
Yeah, exactly. So
should be a good week.
Yeah, it should be fun. So now we got to get into the hockey stuff, though, because we have a lot that we missed since we decided to not do any shows after the start of the season.
We didn't miss it. We just didn't fucking do a show. So whoops.
Yeah. So a couple contracts I want to get to. There was a few big names that have signed in the last few weeks since the start of the season, signed contract extensions. That is, I want to start with this one because this is one of your teams. Carter Verhaeghe signs 8 years, $7 million a year in Florida. Absolutely sweetheart deal for the Panthers, who again benefit from that no state income tax, but are able to get one of the best playoff performers in team history and currently in the league signed to a really nice long deal with the team. He helped them win a cup. He gets a nice long deal where he can probably spend the rest of his career in Florida.
I'm excited about it. I love Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe's a household name in Florida. So he was kind of underwhelming in the playoffs last year. But still been a huge part of this team ever since coming over. Everybody loves him. And I think, like you said, that's a sweetheart deal. It's very cost efficient to the Panthers. Again, benefiting from that no state income tax. I think it's great. And it pretty much locks him in to be a Panther for the rest of his career. I'm excited about that. And I think most Panthers fans are. So as long as he performs to standard, obviously.
Yep. I mean, yeah, you definitely still have to earn the contract, but part of it is he's already earned his keep with helping bring this team its first championship. I want to go over to another, no state income tax contract. Shea Theodore extends with the Vegas Golden Knights 7 years, $7.425 million. Theodore, one of the I would say one of the better offensive defensemen in this league, signs a really good long deal with Vegas. Another guy that helped them bring their first championship home, a guy who loves playing there. I think that deal looks incredible for them in a market where good defensemen are usually going to start going for figures over $9 and $10 million.
I was gonna say he could have definitely gotten more money for that.
He could have got if he would have went to free agency, he probably would have been in the 9 to 10 range, I think, or at least in the mid to high nines.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it only benefits him to stay with Vegas, who's still looking to stay very competitive. And I don't know. I like the deal. Again, these super low cap hits for these guys. This is how some of these teams are going to become juggernauts. And I think Vegas and Florida are both right at the top of that list for teams where you could easily see them putting together another deep playoff run.
Well, money aside, too, there's something to be said for loyalty for both of these guys, too. So
yes, definitely. Then that pays off.
Absolutely. So I think it's good for both teams, especially with Theodore, too. Again, another sweetheart deal. So the guy knows he could have got more money, but decided to stick it out where he is because he likes it. So something to be said for that.
All right, let's move over to Seattle, and we'll cover a couple goalies here. First up in Seattle, Joey Decord signing 5 years, $5 million per year with the Kraken. That's a really good deal. Joey Decord looks like in the next 3 to 5 years, he's really going to kind of take over as one of the best goalies in the league. There are plenty of games where he just looks outright brilliant. And so I think this is already a good contract, I think, for Seattle anyways, but it really has the potential to be one of the biggest steals of any goalie contract in the league in the next few years.
Yeah, all these deals that we're seeing are excellent deals as far as them not being financial burdens, first of all, on the team.
A lot of smart contracts.
A lot of smart contracts for guys that could be pulling more money than they're taking, which goes back to my point earlier about loyalty. So I'm loving this, and I think it's good if you're keeping your team below that cap ceiling. Oh, my hand disappeared. That was weird. And that threw me off.
For those of you listening to this and can't see, Andrew and I have virtual backgrounds up right now, and Andrew raised his hand, and then it just vanished into the darkness.
Into the darkness. But I digress. I think it's just really cool to see all these guys that could be pulling more money, and they're just like, no, I'm content. I'm just focused on winning. That's my favorite thing to see.
Yep. And for, again, a team like Seattle, who is in the middle of trying to build that playoff contender and make some deep runs, getting your what should be your franchise's goalie going for the next decade or so, that's a great deal. It's a good way to build the foundation there,
especially with how close they are. So
yeah, exactly. Another goalie contract I want to talk about. This one is another steal of a deal. Jake Ottinger extending with the Dallas Stars, 8 years, $8.25 million per year. Really good deal for the Stars, I would say. Ottinger is one of the best goalies in the league. There's really no two ways about it. He's probably going to be either the starter or backup for Team USA in these Four Nations face-off tournaments and the Olympics in 2026. I would assume Connor Hellebuck is probably the starter there, but Jake Ottinger is still one of the premier goalies in the league, responsible for bringing the Stars to the conference finals each of the last 2 years. And not that it was solely his work, but he was the backstop, and there was definitely a few games where he bailed them out. So a great deal for one of the best goalies in the league and one of the best goalies on the planet right now. And I think this for Dallas, who's kind of going through a transitional period where a lot of their young talent's up and coming, they're still one of the best teams in the league. And again, they lose that veteran experience with Pavelski retiring, but they still have a great product they're putting on the ice. And locking up your elite franchise goaltender to 8 years is a sigh of relief for all parties involved, I'm sure.
Well, and I want to say for Dallas as a whole, when I watched them play Boston the other night, first thing I want to preface this by saying I have not been impressed by what I've seen with Boston this year so far. But back to the point about Dallas, they look dangerous. Like they look great. And they played great against Boston the other night. And Ottinger wasn't even in net that game. He didn't start.
Yeah, I actually was expecting Dallas to kind of come out of the gate a little slow. With losing Pavelski, you lose a little bit of that line chemistry. I thought they might come out of the gates a little slow, but I believe they're second in the league right now, only behind the Jets, who we'll get to because they haven't lost yet. We'll get to that a little bit later, though. But anyways.
But back to Ottinger. Also, I was reading something a few days ago. He's way taller than I thought he was. He's like 6'5", I think.
He's a big boy. I think
he's tall. I didn't realize he was that
6'4",
big.
Yeah.
So, but he's again, excellent goalie. And when he's on, he is on. And I mean, they don't look like they missed a beat since the playoffs. So I mean, you couldn't even tell that there was a summer in between. They look great. Signing Ottinger's the biggest thing moving forward. So I still don't want to play Dallas. And for me, a guy who does not like Dallas, it's kind of aggravating, but it's still cool to see.
Yep. All right, last one on here. This is a big one out in New York. Alexis Lafreniere extends with the Rangers as 7 years, and it's $7.45 million per year. Lafreniere, the first few years of his career were kind of a bumpy road. He obviously drafted during the COVID draft. A lot of guys from that draft, largely except for Tim Stützle, really kind of were slow out of the gate, had a rough development curve, and for the last couple of years, people were talking about, okay, was Alexis Lafreniere a bust? Remember, he went number 1 in his draft. Kind of a tough path from along the way, but the last 2 seasons, he's really kind of taken a step forward. And now his work has paid off. He's a great player for the Rangers. He earns himself a nice, healthy extension. There's still opportunity for growth there as well. I mean, he's only 23, I believe. And so there's a chance that this deal in another 2-3 years could look really good for them if he continues to grow as he has the last 2 seasons. I think this will pan out to be a really good deal, especially, again, we're dealing with the cap going up substantially compared to what we're used to. A lot of these contracts that have been signed recently are going to look good regardless, I think, of the player's performance, unless they outright suck, because the cap's going to go up by so much. These guys are going to, be worth pennies on the dollar to the cap. And I think Lafreniere's deal is no exception to that.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. This might sound dumb because I understand his first year was in the middle of COVID. Everything was weird, but I just wasn't impressed with him his first season. So I never had high hopes for the kid. And they've done a great job of developing him, and he's become such a core part of that team, such an essential part of that team. And I think, like you said, if he continues to develop the way he has been, he's going to be, I'm willing to bet you'll see a guy that's worth $9 million a year down the road.
Well, again, you got to remember, though, he was drafted in October of 2020.
Correct.
Doesn't really get a chance to do a rookie showcase or a proper training camp or anything like that. It's just you draft and you go back and those whole 2 seasons around COVID were goofy. The 2021 season and even the start of the 21-22 season kind of was later than normal. And so a lot of these guys, like I said, except for Tim Stützle, really, a lot of these guys kind of hit a brick wall. I mean, look at who's the guy in LA, Quentin Byfield. I mean, they were thinking he was a bust for sure, and now he's turned it on and he's one of LA's best players. I mean, a lot of these guys just didn't have the same opportunity that most players get when they get drafted to develop and become something in this league. And so the same expectation was placed on them without the same resources being given to them right out of the gate. And so
and that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, you look at these success stories now, like Byfield and like Lafreniere, and again Stützle, who was good anyways. But to me, it's more impressive that these guys were able to handle all that as essentially teenagers and still develop into great hockey players.
Yeah. So again, back to my point, though, I think the future is bright for him as long as he stays on track. I think the Rangers have at some point, what could be the face of their organization. So we'll see what happens.
All right, let's move on now. Now that we're done with contracts, a couple of things I want to get to real quick. We had a goalie goal not too long ago.
Woo!
Philip Gustafson of the Minnesota Wild launched one down into the empty net of the St. Louis Blues. That was really fun. I think everybody enjoys a good goalie goal. And for me as a Wild fan, seeing the look on Marc-Andre Fleury's face, his ear-to-ear smile after the goal was even better. Although as a Wild fan, I kind of wish it were Fleury that got the goal because,
who doesn't love Fleury?
It's Fleury, yeah. But hopefully he gets a couple cracks at it this year before he retires. But yeah, goalie goals are always fun. That was the first one we've had, I believe, since Linus Ullmark's a couple of years ago against Vancouver. Actually, Tristan Jarry had one last year against.
I was going to say,
I keep forgetting Tristan Jarry's an NHL goalie because, well, right now he's not. He's in the AHL right now. So there you go. But yeah, always fun to see a goalie goal. I figured we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that because those are awesome.
Yes, sir.
Now we're going to get to something that's not quite as fun. Boone Jenner, captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets, injured in either practice, I believe it was practice, is after getting shoulder surgery, will likely be out for the entirety of this season. And the Jackets, once again, cannot catch a fucking break.
No, man, it's just blow after blow after blow. And I mean, not going to get on the somber note, but I mean, the season was already off to a rough start with the whole Gaudreau incident, and this doesn't make things better. I will say, though, one thing that I think has done wonders for this team as far as chemistry and motivation goes is the addition of Sean Monahan.
He looks like he's having a good time with those guys.
And the whole team, everybody loves him. He's just a good locker room guy. Everybody on the team loves him. The fans love him. I think he's a great fit there. And so I think that'll still kind of hold this team together going forward. Again, your hopes aren't sky high for this season. You're just hoping to be a little bit better than last year. But Boone being out, that's a huge blow to this team. So at least we got Fantilli this year, but yeah.
There's still a lot for Columbus to work at, and actually right now they're not off to a terrible start given what they faced. You lose your team's probably best player. You lose your captain for the entire season because of an injury, and they come out of the gate, they're 3-1 with relatively low expectations. This team has actually played pretty well for the most part, I would say. They go last night in Nashville and lose in OT, a tough loss for them. And the goal by Marchessault was unbelievable. The great deke along the half wall, and then he toe drags in the slot to rip it past. I think it was Elvis last night, and that. I think it was Elvis in that last night for the Jackets. And so, not the outcome they're looking for, but again, not a horrible start to the season for a team with pretty low expectations for the most part. I think the ship is still sailing pretty strongly right now. You can definitely tell they're playing well as a team together. There is that chemistry there and that camaraderie. Like, let's do this for Boone and for Johnny. And so I haven't hated what I've seen of the Jackets so far. I do think there's another gear that they can find, though. Just watching them play, there's moments where I'm like, this team could be really damn good. So
yeah,
we'll see where things go. And, who knows? I'm also hoping Matejchuk gets a recall at some point in the season to play up with the big club. I'm glad David Juracek's having a chance to play with the big club now this year. I think Werenski looks really good so far this year. His skating looks really good. And so we'll see where things are, in a month or two, and kind of see what this team is really going to be for the season. But so far, I haven't hated what I've seen, and I'm excited to get to the arena on Wednesday night and watch the game.
Yeah, so am I. And I think that, again, this team is significantly better than the team last year. By no means do I consider them a playoff contender at all at this point anyway. Anything can happen to any team, but I don't hate the product either. So,
yep. So let's move on here. Now we're going to go from the Jackets, and now we're going to move on to the Winnipeg Jets. What's funny is I wrote this note down the other day just to make sure I didn't forget to mention it, and then the Jets still haven't lost. So the Jets are 8-0-0 to start the season. They have not lost a game. They look incredible. I mean, this is kind of what we expected of the Jets to some extent, where the talent's there. They have one of the best goalies in the world. The only question mark in my mind really was going into the season, can they get it done in the playoffs? But how do you perform under a new coach? I think Scott Arniel's proven that he's got these guys playing well.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it helps too when you come in as a new coach to an organization that's already essentially capable of coaching itself at this point. So
yeah, it is nice when you walk into a team that's already one of the best in the league. And I mean, Chris Knobloch was kind of the benefactor of that last year when he's joined Edmonton. I mean, Edmonton had such a rotten start to the season last season. They've kind of had a rough start to this one too.
Yes, sir.
But he comes in, and that's a team that's already loaded with talent. And when they right the ship, it's like it's easy to kind of coach a team that's that good. Now, I don't think anybody envisioned them taking that all the way to the finals last year. But with the Jets, the expectations kind of there a little bit more, again, when you have the scoring talent up front and you have one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie on the planet, and that it really kind of goes a long way. And so for the Jets, now you have this incredible start so far. Now, how long can you sustain a hot run like this? Obviously, you're not going to go 82-0, but how long can you sustain a stretch, or how long can you sustain it throughout the season where you're winning? Let's say they lose the next two. How long can you win 8 out of every 10 games? I mean, how elite can you be? I mean, I think winning 8 out of every 10 is a little bit unrealistic, but just as an example, can you stay hot all season? There's going to be a little bit of lulls throughout the year, but can you come back from those and go on these runs where you're winning 4 or 5 games in a row all the time?
Well, the other thing that I think is they are out for blood right now because they're still pissed about getting bounced by Colorado.
Yeah,
that's the big thing right there. A team, first of all, Winnipeg should have went way farther than they did last year.
Yeah.
So that's their
playoff result last year was completely unacceptable.
Yes, and you know your team is better than this. You know what you're capable of, and it's certainly not losing to a team with horrendous goaltending. It was disappointing, for lack of a better term, to watch them in the playoffs. So I know they are on an absolute mission right now. And honestly, at this point, there's nobody that's going to stop them at this point. So we'll see how long they can maintain this for.
Yep. Now, you mentioned the team that ended their season last year was Colorado with a bad goalie.
Yes.
That's kind of where we're at right now with Colorado. We talked about it in the season preview. We talked about it after Colorado got eliminated. We've talked about it since the show's inception. This should probably be the best team in the league every single year, but they don't have a goalie. And Alexander Georgiev has rightfully earned himself the nickname of Forgiev this year for giving up like at least 4 goals in pretty much every game he started. And so I don't even know where we go from here with the Avalanche because it's such an exhausted topic at this point, but it's so frustrating how blatantly obvious it is. And I know there's a salary cap to work around. And so this isn't a, snap your finger and make the issue go away problem. But again, you have a team that can win the Stanley Cup if you just get decent goaltending. Why the fuck are you allowing you're allowing like ECHL backup level goaltending to be your NHL starter on what should be one of the best teams in the league? It just does not make sense. I mean, I don't know if Georgiev's got a no move clause in his contract. He might, but if he doesn't, how don't you waive this fucking guy and try anything? I know I saw Annunen was in that the other night for them too. But you got to try anything at this point. Give Annunen the reins and just see what he can do, because you know what you've got with Georgiev, and it's simply not good enough.
Well, dude, I don't have any sympathy for Colorado at this point, because we've been talking, like you said, it's exhausting. We've been talking about this since before the trade deadline last season, and they made no attempt to resolve their goaltending issues at the trade deadline. They didn't do shit during the offseason. I mean, why am I going to feel sorry for him at this point? And it's annoying talking about this subject at this point. They don't want to make the change. And I've seen people saying, well, yeah, what about your defense out in front? Fine. Their defense isn't even that bad. And regardless, at some point, you got to make a damn save. That's the thing. That's what your goalie's there for. So there's not really much more we can say about this that we haven't already said.
Yep. By the way, for Colorado, one fascinating point here: Cale Makar tied for second in the league in scoring as a defenseman. 4-way tie for second. Jack Eichel, Artemi Panarin, Kirill Kaprizov, Cale Makar all tied for second in the league with 15 points. Right now, Mark Stone is the league leader in points, 17 points in 9 games. He's got 4 goals and 13 assists. Jack Eichel, again, right behind him, 3 goals and 12 assists. You wonder why Vegas is off to such a roll. And Pietrangelo is over a point a game for them. Barbashev's over a point a game. Hurdle's over a point a game. No wonder Vegas is off to a good start. Also want to shout out Evgeny Malkin. 14 points in 10 games. I don't know how long he can sustain this, but Gino is playing really well for the Penguins, which is good because they haven't had a great start to the season. I think Sid's kind of got a slower start than he would expect of himself. Jari's been terrible enough to the point where he's down in the AHL on a conditioning stint. Jari's just fucking worthless. I know Penguins fans largely are wanting this ship to sail too, but at this point, what do you even do? The franchise has been cursed with goaltending since Marc-Andre Fleury left. The year after he goes, Matt Murray's career falls off a cliff. they bring in Jari and he's terrible, and DeSmith wasn't good, and Jari had the 1 or 2 good years with them, but other than that, he's been unserviceable. Nedeljkovic has been was okay for them. They've really just been kind of spinning their tires in the goaltending department as well, but with the team not being near elite enough, it's really sticking out like a sore thumb.
Well, but my thing is with the team not being, I don't even want to say a playoff contender right now. With the team being the way it is, I mean, it's less of a priority to attack your goaltending situation, like making that a priority right now. There's other things on that team, but I do agree. Pittsburgh's been very lackluster, but Gino, I can't believe it, man. That guy looks incredible. So
yeah, he's playing well, which is it's kind of fun to see because it feels like we're in 2010 now.
Yeah, back to prime Gino.
So all right, let's move on here. Hang on a sec, my notes just went away. All right, so another thing I wanted to mention too, I mentioned all these guys that are a point a game. We've had a lot of extremely high scoring games to start this season. I mean, I cannot believe how many ridiculous shootout games we've had. I mean, you can really pick out any day. I'll pick on yesterday. There was a couple good ones. Minnesota and Philly was a 7-5 final. Panthers and Islanders 6-3. Vegas and San Jose 7-3. We'll get to San Jose in a second too because they're even messier than we thought they could be. Canadians over the Blues 5-2. Let's pick out another night in the league. Let's go to Tuesday night. Columbus 6-2 over the Leafs. Minnesota 5-1 over the Panthers. Rangers 7-2 over the Canadians. Devils and Lightning was 8-5 final score. Canucks over Chicago 6-3. Every single night where we have multiple games, it just seems like, or I don't want to say multiple, but every single night where at least half the league's playing, it seems like most of those games are all high scoring affairs. So I don't know if it's due to lack of quality in goaltending. I don't know if the game's just that fast and it's easier to score because attacking with speed is usually a good way to score. I mean, the save percentages are down in the league the last few years and the shooting percentages are up. And I don't know if it's the goalie's getting worse, the shooter's getting better, or some combination of the two, but it just seems like every night there's at least one score where you're like, holy shit, what an absolute shootout.
Right. The first thing I want to say is I truly think it's because of how fast the game is nowadays. But the other thing for me is, I mean, you've been an advocate for this too in the past. I could sit there and love every second of a game that would end 1-0 in overtime because I love the goalie duels, man. I love seeing who's going to crack first. But we've gotten to a point in this league, in this game in general, where when you see a game that's 1-0 now, it's kind of weird. I don't want to say aggravating, but it's out of the norm because you're so used to all the scoring. And I think more scoring does get the crowds more involved with it. But I remember a few years ago at this point when the NHL was saying, what can we do to get more scoring in this league? And I feel like ever since they just said that, people just been filling in the net ever since.
Yeah, so. And I know they did make changes to make the goalie equipment slightly smaller. I can't imagine the small tweaks they made to the pads have resulted in this, but I obviously the talent levels are way higher on the offensive end anyways.
Yeah.
But I mean, as a fan, I love goalie duels, but honestly, the last few years where we're starting to see these ridiculous barn burner games, that's starting to get even more fun for me too. Last year, I think of a game we were watching Minnesota and Vancouver. The final score was 10-7. And that first half of that game, I shut it off after the first period because I was so mad. And then towards the end of the second period, I saw the Wild were scoring to catch back up, so we put it back on, and then the Wild scored like 5 goals in a few minutes. And again, that game ends up being a 10-7 final. And so these barn burner games are starting to get more fun because at least as a fan, it feels like you're never really out of it until the last 2 minutes and you're down by 3. But it feels like
that, who knows?
Yeah, it feels like no leads are safe anymore, which is kind of exciting. It definitely makes the game even more watchable than it already is. So I like it. I just thought it was something worth pointing out because I do remember the days in the mid 2010s where the league's like, we need to find more scoring. We're not getting enough scoring. Well, we've got the damn scoring now. So
Yeah.
Don't make any changes because now all these pucks are going in. So I like it.
No, and I mean, that's such a big, I mean, obviously the point of the game is to score anyway, but I mean, as far as fan experience goes, the goal horn, the yelling and the jumping out of your seat, that's a whole part of the fan experience. And that's what everybody wants. So I think it's the best thing possible for the game.
Yep, definitely. All right, let's move on to the San Jose Sharks. I want to at least mention them before we kind of move on here. The Sharks, kind of a tough break for them to start the year. They play one game and then lose Macklin Celebrini for a little while because of an injury. Look, they're still the Sharks. We talked about this in our season preview. There's not a lot of expectation. There's obviously a ton of room for growth, but losing Celebrini in game one, not ideal. And so the Sharks are 0-7-2 to start the year. They really just are kind of look like what they were last year. I mean, they had a terrible start to the year last year. I think, what did they lose their first 10 games last year or something like that? Mm-hmm. Yep. They're on, if they lose their next game, they're going to have the same start. And so I don't know. I don't really know what to say to keep a Sharks fan optimistic. I mean, their brightest spot was drafting Celebrini number 1, and he goes down in game 1. Will Smith really hasn't looked great for them. I know his debut was much anticipated. He hasn't been great. I haven't been overly impressed with Zetterlund, and they just kind of look bland. Like, they just look exhausted. And again, I know it's the Sharks, and I know they're not loaded up with elite talent yet. And I know a lot of their future success rides on with the guys they're currently trying to develop, but they're not at that stage yet. And so right now you just have to weather the storm, ride it out, because there's no other choice. They just kind of look, it's ironic to say about the Sharks, but they look dead in the water. Like, there's not much you can say about a team that just can't win one freaking game. I mean, that first game of the season, they looked like they were going to absolutely trounce the Blues, and they blow what was a 4 or 5-1 lead or something ridiculous, and they lose that game. And they've just been tripping over themselves ever since. And so now you just have to, like last year, you just got to kind of ride it out. Obviously, this is not a playoff team of any sort, but what seemed like it might at least be a fun season to watch looks like it could be destined to be another season of misery in the Shark Tank.
Well, I'm pretty sure I said this when we were previewing the West this season. I never really had high hopes or expectations for San Jose anyway. I was expecting it to be almost the same exact season as last year. I mean, getting Macklin Celebrini, you'd hope that has a positive effect on the team, but losing him for a short period of times, obviously no good. So I just don't know where to go from here. If I'm a San Jose fan, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to do. I guess you kind of just ride the lightning and see where you end up.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunately when you're dealt that hand, that's all you can do.
It's hockey season, and you're looking to work on your stick handling or maybe even your shot, but ice time just isn't an option for you right now. Luckily, our buddies over at Xenopucks have got you covered. They've developed an elite off-ice practice puck that, in addition to looking like the real thing, is the same size and weight as a regulation hockey puck to give you that authentic feel on the end of your stick. It works better than other off-ice practice pucks on almost any surface, whether you use it on hardwood, carpet, concrete, or even asphalt. Xenopucks glide like a real puck on ice. So if you're looking to improve your game without setting foot on the ice, head over to www.xenopucks.com and get yourself a puck. Check out their merch selection and be sure to follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks.
You may have been watching since last season when we had Bob Pizzini on the show. We also had Mark Mowers and Andrew Alberts. But Bob Pizzini is the one that first brought it to our attention. The Warrior for Life Fund. They are a nonprofit organization, and they help transitioning military service members and their families transition back into civilian life, whether it be getting out of the military or coming back from combat or any type of deployment. And they do that through the game of hockey by they have their own hockey team, and they're partnered with the Boston Bruins alumni organization as well as the NHL, and they'll send them around. They play different games. They get these guys, most of them are former special operations operators, out on the ice, build that camaraderie, which is such a key part of integrating back into the community. They do a great job of that. They're always posting things online. The events are just incredible, and the entire organization is run by some of the best people that you'll ever meet. And at the end of the day, it's helping our nation's veterans. So if you are interested in contributing to this program, you can head over to warriorforlifefund.org and make a donation today. And while I'm on that topic, I brought up Bob Pizzini earlier. If you get a chance and you're someone who at your 9-to-5 job, you're in a leadership position, or honestly, anything you do in life where you give direction or guidance, you're in any type of leadership position, you can check out Bob Pizzini's book. I don't know if I can get it up on the screen here because of my virtual background, but it's called Elevate Your Leadership, and it is an incredible book. Bob is a great guy. He's a very smart man. He's an award-winning CEO, and he's a U.S. military veteran. So head over to Amazon right now. Again, the book is called Elevate Your Leadership. Check that out as well, and make sure to leave him a review.
All right, I dig it. A couple more teams I want to talk about since we did miss the start of the season, and I figure we'd be remiss if we didn't mention them. How about Calgary? Their start to their year.
Yeah, man.
They're 5-2-1 right now, but they're playing really well. The fans are vibing for sure, and they're playing this well without Yegor Sharangovich, who was their lone bright spot last year. And so it's kind of cool to see. When Canadian teams are good, I always think it's pretty good for the league because of how diehard the fan bases are, and the Flames fans are feeling it right now. And I think they like what they're seeing from Dustin Wolf. And so I wanted to at least shout them out. I don't want to get into it too much because it is so early in the season, and the expectation still isn't quite there for the Flames yet. So if they sustain this run, we'll definitely be giving them more love. But at least with how hot they started the season, I wanted to mention them.
Oh, rightfully so.
I also wanted to mention the Washington too. They're another team where it's like, where the hell did they come from? And they're one of the best teams in the league. Obviously, we're still on the Ovechkin goals watch, but that's kind of off to a slow start. But the team itself is off to a really good start. So we'll see how long they can sustain that run. Utah as well. They have kind of hit a wall the last week, but they came out of the gates flying. And I don't know if some of it was just because they were a quote unquote new team and they kind of have a chip on their shoulders as well. Like, hey, even though we're not the new kids on the block, we're the new kids on the block because we're the new team. The fans in that building have been unreal. The turnout's been good for the games, and I can't wait to see the renovations they do for the arena so they can get rid of those obstructed view seats.
Yeah, man, dude, when people were posting pictures of those online, I was like, that is rough.
It is rough, but I do want to say, because I'm tired of seeing this shit, is the people complaining about it, because we knew from day one that this was going to be a thing. That Ryan Smith himself said, hey, we're going to have to renovate this arena. This is going to be a years-long project. So, and obviously they can't do the renovations during the season. So you have to go with what you can get. And so the experience, though, has been good. The fans seems like they're really into it. So I'm glad it has worked out there. I wanted to at least mention them, even though they've kind of slowed down a little. They came out of the gates flying too.
Well, and as far as their arena goes, it's better than playing in a college arena that holds 5,000 people. So,
yeah, I was gonna say, you know what? I would take an obstructed view in a full size arena over a high school arena that the Coyotes played in the last few years.
Absolutely. So. And this is what happens when, they made this move in a hurry. So this is what you expect. You knew it was coming. It's like, I don't know why people are acting surprised by this. That's what blows me away.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
A couple teams that have been kind of shocking out of the gate. I think the two big ones that we're going to talk about here. First is the Edmonton Oilers make a run of the Stanley Cup final last year and have just been partially unwatchable to start this season. They're 3-4-1 right now. Obviously, they're not in any danger of like missing the playoffs. There's still so much season left, but they just, especially the first 5 games, just looked dead.
Yeah, this isn't a team that you would think, like watching them now, you wouldn't think this team was just in the Stanley Cup final. So yeah, it's been, I guess depressing is the word I'm looking for to watch. I don't know. I mean, what's it going to take? It's time to wake up. I don't know what you do in this situation.
I think it was Connor McDavid who said we need to dig the fuck in. So
yeah,
I think they need to start doing that. And I mean, truthfully, again, they're 3-4-1, not the position they want to be in right now, but there's still so much season left. I know they can right the ship. I'm certain they will. But the just lack of give a shit at the start of the year was concerning to me. And I'm hoping they turn it around, because this is a team that needs to be good, and the league is better when this team is good. So we'll see how they can do about turning it around.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I'm just like, does losing the Stanley Cup kill your morale that much that it really negatively impacts how you start the next season? I don't know. I feel like they should be out for blood right now.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. And again, and the next 2 months could completely change. They could go on a heater and win 10 of 12 or something. You just never know. And I mean, that's what they did last year when they started off bad and Knobloch got hired. Is they just, what did they win, 17 in a row or something ridiculous?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's still time, but we had to mention that because they just looked as flat as a pancake out of the gate.
Oh, well, like you said, we'll see what happens.
All right, now let's talk about the off-season darlings, the Nashville Predators. This one surprised me more than anything. It took them, 6 games to get their first win.
Yeah,
and they're starting to build up some momentum now. You can see the team chemistry is a little more there. Now they're 3-5, but they came out of the gates just unwatchable. They were so bad, and now they're kind of starting to build up some momentum. But I think I think when you make that big of a change in your team in the offseason, I mean, it can screw with team chemistry. And I get. I just couldn't believe with the level of talent how poor they started. I understand not winning every game and having some growing pains, like a power play that can't quite execute and stuff like that. But just sloppy play from top to bottom, and the piss poor goaltending it was all kind of surprising. But it seems like they're starting to slowly get it together here.
Yeah, I was a little blown away, like that, with as absolutely stacked as that team is. I thought they were just going to come out and kick everybody's ass. One thing that I'm still big on, and I mentioned this before, and a couple people have told me that they don't agree with me, but I'm sticking to my guns on this. I just don't think Andrew Brunette should be coaching that team. I don't think he's the right fit. That's just my opinion. That the talent's there, I just don't think he's the guy to manage it. So we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's something. And again, we'll see. And like with the Oilers, we'll see in a month or two where they're at. But you start to wonder when you see a team have these odd, weird struggles with their performance. If you do start to wonder if it's a coaching thing. I mean, you look at the Panthers under Andrew Brunette, one of the most high-flying offenses, really just had no defensive structure, and they were just kind of sloppy in their own end, and they made a big change with Paul Maurice, and that's obviously paid off dividends for them.
Yes.
But for Andrew Brunette, I'm just like, it's kind of the same story with the Preds last year. These just extremely inconsistent play, but when the offense got going, they won 16 out of 18 games and late in the season to push them into the playoffs in a year that they looked completely out of it. And if, again, first round, then they fall flat in the first round. So I don't know. At a certain point, I bet you money if they stay just kind of middle of the pack this season, I think Andrew Brunette's seat will get very hot very quick.
There's that. The other thing, with every game that passes, I start to slightly question Saros in goal more and more. So I don't know. I love him. I don't know, man. There's so much there. Like that team, there's so much good on that team that this shouldn't even be a discussion we're having right now.
I can't believe you would say that about Saros. I mean, he was your passenger when you drove for Uber.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you say that? How can you say that about your own customers?
Yeah.
That's so rude.
Hey, he was a nice guy. Real nice guy. Man, that was 10 years ago already. Holy shit.
Time flies.
Yep.
And so, the Preds will be a fun one to watch. I think if they can get this thing going, I think Andrew Brunette's coaching still may be in question, but there's so much talent here. I truthfully can't see a world where they don't right this ship and at least make it a playoff team. I just don't see that happening. But I think Andrew Brunette's seat is going to start getting hot quick if they can't perform. Another guy whose seat is rumored to be getting really hot is Jim Montgomery, the head coach of the Boston Bruins.
Yes, sir.
It seems like that seat is boiling hot and that a certain Joel Quenneville might be chasing him out the door.
Yeah. As far as Quenneville coming in, I mean, I know Quenneville's a great coach as far as team success goes.
Well, we know the history.
The history, and me being a Bruins fan, I just, we already had him in Florida, and it looked good there. But it's always going to be tainted now because the history.
I will say for this, I haven't seen anything legitimate report about Quenneville, but that seems to be the popular name in hockey circles, which I get it. The guy coached a team to 3 championships, albeit as disgusting a route as they took to get there. But
yeah.
I understand from a talent perspective, I suppose. But yeah, it does seem like Jim Montgomery's got to get the Bruins going here pretty quick, or he's going to find himself out of a job very quick, which is weird to say about a guy who took a team to the best regular season record ever 2 seasons ago.
Yeah,
but
I don't think that was him, though, man. Like,
it's all about what have you done for me lately in this league.
Yeah, I was going to say, my thing is, I don't even think that season was because of Jim Montgomery. It was just a great Bruins team. The chemistry was there. We still had Bergie on the team. Like, it was just...
Well, and then they get into the playoffs and he gets out coached, and then he gets out coached by the same guy again this year in round 2. And I'll tell you what, if they would have lost that series round 1 to the
Leafs, he'd have been gone.
That would have been his last game as the Bruins head coach. I think because they got through that and he rallied the team together, so to speak. But to go out and get dumped on twice by the same coach in back-to-back years, that's troublesome.
I think the other thing is, and I've been a firm believer of this since it happened, I think that they were dumb for getting rid of Bruce Cassidy. I think Jake DeBrusk's whining played a big factor in that, and now we don't even have Jake DeBrusk anymore either. I don't think Bruce Cassidy was the problem. And then to prove it, my point, he goes to Vegas and wins a Stanley Cup the following season. So
yeah. Absolutely.
I don't think he was the problem there. Everybody seemed to play fine with him. It was Jake DeBrusk was always complaining about him, but he did the same thing with Claude Julien too. So I don't want to hear it.
Well, for what it's worth, Claude Julien, that it was time for him to go when he.
Absolutely.
Those Bruins teams from 2015 to 2017 were troubled.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was time for Julien to go regardless. His coaching style, the league caught up with him. His coaching style was kind of out of touch. The league quickly moved away from that all defense shut it down scheme that he won a cup with when he was with the Bruins. And it's such a high flying game now. And I think Cassidy was the right kind of guy to take over in Boston, and that's why he took him to the final after 2 seasons there, or 2 full seasons there.
Yeah.
But I agree. I don't think getting rid of Cassidy was ever the right move. I know the organization wanted to make some kind of a change, and they felt their options were probably limited, but I don't know. Getting rid of a coach and then he goes and wins a Stanley Cup the next year, I think that's a rough
look, man. Yeah. For me, Montgomery was never the answer, in my opinion. Again, he comes into a Bruins team that was absolutely elite, and then come playoff time, they shit the bed. So I don't think he's an elite coach by any stretch, and I still personally believe Bruce Cassidy is one of the best coaches in the league right now. I don't know, man. Jim Montgomery, like you said, his seat is boiling hot, and rightfully so. And like I mentioned at the start of this episode, I have not been impressed by what I've seen with Boston's to start the season. And I know we're still really early on, but I'm like, holy crap, man, what is going on? So we'll see. And I know things happen on the bench that aren't always personal. And I don't care what Marshy said to defend it. Something is going on between him and Jim Montgomery. I know it.
I also thought that was kind of blown. I thought it was kind of blown out of proportion myself. I thought that was a coach. When you're a captain, there's an extra level of accountability that you need to take. And I just think when you look at that interaction, Montgomery's screaming and Marchand's looking 1,000-mile stare straight across the ice. When your coach is yelling at you like that and you're the captain, you need to look at him and there needs to be a level of respect and communication with your head coach. And so a lot of issues are at play there, but I think all the more reason that's why Montgomery's seat is hot. I think there's a chance he might have lost the room. I mean, when your captain won't even look at you, even after Montgomery gives him that bump, first of all, he didn't fucking punch him. I was tired of seeing that. He didn't punch him. He didn't shove him. He gives him a bump to grab his attention. When your own captain won't look at you after you physically like bump him like that, I don't know. I think that's a guy that might have lost the room. And I think that's part of the reason the seat's so hot, more so than it already probably was. They really haven't got out to the best start. I know they were expected to take a step back this year, but I don't know, man. That reeks. I thought the interaction between the two of them was blown out of proportion because everybody said, oh, he punched him or whatever. I'm like, no, he didn't. But there is something to be said about the fact that Marchand won't even look at him. And so we'll see what happens.
Are we ready to move on from this? Because I do have one thing I want to bring up.
Yes, we are. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I was at the Milwaukee Admirals home opener this past weekend with my buddy, and he brought up a good question because it was something that doesn't happen every game, but there's a difference. He wanted to know, and I told him I'd have you discuss this on the show, what the difference between a game misconduct and a 10-minute misconduct is. And this is kind of a segment for people who are new to hockey, but he wanted an explanation.
All right. So generally speaking, as the names imply, that's the biggest difference. So a 10-minute misconduct is you're out of the game for 10 minutes. I believe you can, if it's not in the final 10 minutes of the game, I believe you sit in the box for 10 whole minutes. And then after that 10 minutes, you come in after the next whistle. Game misconduct obviously means you're removed from the game. However, with misconduct penalties, there is no man advantage to a misconduct penalty unless it's in conjunction with another penalty. Like a lot of times you'll see with game misconducts, they're usually preceded by a 5-minute major penalty. But generally speaking, a game misconduct, you're out for the rest of the game. A 10-minute misconduct, you're out for the next 10 minutes. But again, the big thing is that there's no change in manpower. You see 10-minute misconducts handed out a lot in games that get really chippy where there's scraps after every single whistle and the refs are getting tired of it. So they'll start handing out misconducts. So that way it doesn't sway the game in advantage of either team as far as power plays go. But that way you get some of the hot heads off the ice for an extended period of time to let cooler heads prevail. Whereas, again, game misconduct's usually a more severe penalty, and again, usually preceded by a major penalty, usually for some of the more heinous plays, illegal check to the head, elbowing or, charging, a heavy boarding hit, some stuff like that, checking from behind. That usually, those kind of major penalties are usually followed by a game misconduct.
Yep.
Or intent to injure too. Now there is a match penalty as well, which is kind of the same thing. A match penalty, you get kicked out of the game. With match penalties, though, I believe the ruling is if you get a match penalty in a game, you miss the rest of the game in your end plus the next game minimum. And then usually you only see match penalties when it's something really vicious like intent to injure, and those are usually followed by multiple game suspensions, anyways.
Looking at you, Todd Bertuzzi.
Yeah, well,
oh man.
So yeah, that's a good question, but that's generally the difference between the two. 10-minute misconducts are usually just used as discipline for one game, and game misconducts are usually handed out in conjunction with a big penalty.
And as Brian said, to put it in simpler terms too, they're more so individual punishments than they are team punishments. I mean,
correct. Yeah, that's why there's no change in manpower.
Correct. I mean, it's affecting the team in the sense that your whole team is short a guy, but on the ice, you're not short a guy.
Correct. So. I do want to mention this too, because this has been a hot button topic. So obviously Fanatics has taken over as the jersey supplier for the NHL this season, across the board. So as far as on ice product for fans, everything. So Fanatics, as far as the on ice product, took over the factory that Adidas was in, and I think Reebok was in before them. And so they're producing the jerseys out of that same factory in Quebec. The on-ice product for the players has remained largely unchanged. The only noticeable difference really is the spongy-looking shoulders on the jerseys are no longer there. But my wife and I were at the Mall of America last weekend. We were watching game between the Wild and the Kraken, and we went to the Mall of America. And we were in the Lids store, and then we were at the XL Energy Center. And I was looking at the Fanatics, the not the on ice Authentics, but the pro, whatever it is. It's the middle one. It's the one that is equivalent to like the Adidas Authentics from previous years.
But you don't have to pay $450 for it.
Correct. So it's the same tier. It's like I think American dollars. They were like $179 for a blank jersey. It's the same like the Adidas ones were in previous years. And so I was looking at one of those jerseys. I was holding it in my hands, and I got to be honest, the material feels exactly the same. Other than the shoulders, it feels like the jerseys are the exact same. So while I thought most of us would be worried about the quality going down, I think the only ones that really are cheap are like the Fanatics breakaway line, which are designed to fit more like a shirt rather than a jersey or a sweater would. And those have already been that way for some time anyways. The on ice replicas, the $170 ones or $180 ones, they feel like they're the exact same material. Like I was wearing my Wild jersey and I was holding a new Wild Fanatics jersey in my hand. And I was like, this feels like the same material. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like it'll rip apart. It felt just like the Adidas one that I was wearing. And so I just for anybody that was worried about the quality of these things and hasn't had a chance to look at them, honestly, the premium ones feel like they're the same jersey. So if you've been apprehensive about maybe getting a new jersey of your favorite player, I wouldn't be too worried. I think I have to bring it up. I think it's called the premium is the equivalent to the Adidas Authentics, but they do sell those ridiculous $430 pro jerseys where they're like built to the spec of that player. But
yeah,
I think you're crazy if you buy those.
Yeah, just trust me. We all know I love buying hockey jerseys, but I don't need a official on ice product because I am not an official on.
Yeah, I was gonna
player,
say
so.
I would not buy that unless they were telling me I was suiting up for the game. Because screw that.
But I can't speak to the quality of the Fanatics jerseys yet because I have not gotten my hands on one to actually observe it. But when we go to Columbus on Wednesday night, I'll obviously take a look so I can see for myself. But for right now, I'm just biased towards the Adidas jerseys just because I loved them from day one. And they were such a step up from the Reebok jerseys.
Yeah, I was never crazy about the Reebok jerseys. I mean, they weren't bad jerseys. They were okay. I think really the only downside to the Adidas jerseys was the New Jersey Devils. The Devils, I thought, had one of the best jerseys of all time. And they switched to the Adidas, and I just think their uniforms now look like shit. They look like fucking NHL 25 EA Sports Hockey League jerseys. They just look so cheap and underwhelming. And I don't know. I'm a big stripes guy, and taking away the waist stripe I thought was a terrible idea. The Devils jersey, especially for an organization that won, 3 Stanley Cups, was it, with those black and red jerseys with the waist stripes and everything. That was one of the cleanest looks in the league, and they turned it into easily one of the shittiest ones. But other than that, the Adidas jerseys were some of the best sports uniforms I've ever seen.
Yeah. So again, I mean, I'll have a better opinion for everybody after Brian and I go to this game on Wednesday. But Brian's also, I'm not trying to sound biased here, but if Brian tells you something that's hockey related, you should probably just take his word for it.
Yeah, trust me, I'm always looking for reasons to dump on Fanatics. This is not one of those situations where I can. I truly feel like it feels like the same jersey. Visually, they look the same too. Again, other than the shoulders, like the sleeve material and the torso, it all looks like it's the same stuff. So I am inclined to believe that it probably is, just with a Fanatics logo instead of the Adidas logo.
Yeah, but we'll see. That's I'm not here to dog on things until I form my own opinion.
Yep. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us for today's show, I think, unless you have anything else you wanted to touch on. We covered pretty much everything I wanted to mention on this and then some.
Yeah, no, I think it was a good first episode back. I can assure everybody for real this time, we will be back again next week.
Yeah, I was going to say, now that we're all moved, I don't foresee us missing any shows unless something bad happens. I don't foresee us missing anything for a long time now.
Yeah, things were a little chaotic the last couple weeks, far more so for Brian than for me. But I mean, even sometimes things get in the way of us being able to let you know what's going on. So we try our best. I mean, we do both have full-time jobs in addition to the show. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been patient with us. And I'd also like to point out that our viewership is growing even more. I was looking at our analytics a couple days ago, and the viewership has just absolutely taken off in like Delaware, Massachusetts, Quebec. Like, I just insane. So welcome to everybody who's tuning in from those places, and all our new viewers in general. It's been incredible. We are extremely grateful to have you here, and we can only hope that we're putting out a product you all enjoy.
Yep, definitely. And I do want to say before we go again, now that we're back, make sure you get your questions in. You can email them, freshicehockeypodcast@gmail.com. You can go to our website, freshicehockeypodcast.com, and click the link there at the bottom of the page to email us your question. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also leave your question in the comments section. You can also DM us on Instagram at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast and at Brian Fresh Ice. I'd be more than glad to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be a question for the show. If it's just a question you want us to answer to you directly, feel free to message us directly. You don't have to email the show. We are pretty responsive. So I would also just like to take a quick minute. I don't remember if I did this. I don't think I did this last time we were on, because I don't think it had happened yet. But I just want to give a huge, massive shout out to our friends Steve and Carter over at our sponsors, Xenopucks. They just got their product in with Pure Hockey. So again, make sure you check out Xenopucks, www.xenopucks.com. Check out their merch selection and get yourself one of their pucks. They make some top quality stuff, and they're real good people over there. So shout out to them. Congratulations to you guys.
Yes, definitely. That's well deserved too. You guys
absolutely
making a fantastic product. So yeah, very excited for those guys. We'll have to try and get them on here one of these days. I know they're busy and we're busy, so we'll see what we can have happen. But Andrew, I believe we are going to have a guest next week on our show. If you want to talk about that real quick.
We are. Let me grab my phone real quick so I don't screw this up, because I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly who I'm talking about. And it's not loading.
This is good radio.
No, it isn't. Uh-oh. There we go. All right. So next week we will have Andrew Dibble on our page, or not on our page, on our show. He owns a hockey team out of Michigan. The team is the Kalkaska Battlers. They are a semi-pro hockey team playing in the American Premier Hockey League. And his exact words were, "I consider it the equivalent of a single-A baseball." He's the owner of the team. He's got a resume a mile long, and Brownie points with me. He's also a military veteran. So we're excited to have him on the show, talk about owning a hockey team, and see what kind of input he has for our show. So that should be a good one. You definitely don't want to miss it.
Yeah. That'll be a fun one. Looking forward to doing that. It'll be nice to have a guest on again, but yeah, it feels good to be back now. And for me, it feels so good to be moved. If there's one thing I hate in life, it's moving. I fucking hate moving. So,
well, now you don't have to do it for a long time.
Yeah, I was gonna say now, and
at least not out of state.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I tell you what, that cross country. Well, I don't want to call it cross country, but it was. We did drive 6 hours to get here, though. It felt like an eternity.
I would say it was only like 2 states, but
it was 3.
Yeah. 2.5.
But we made it now. We're settled in. We're working. Life's good. So
I'm ecstatic to have you here. So
yeah, we're happy to be here. It happened so fast. We started talking about it in early August. We actually had discussed moving to Minnesota. We had found a couple neighborhoods in outside the Twin Cities that we really liked, and we were going to look at a house, and then we discussed moving by you and your wife back in August, and lo and behold, we're here before November. So it happened really fast, but I'm glad we're here, and I'm glad all that's over, and looking forward to starting this next chapter, and glad to be doing the podcast again every week.
Yeah, I think the only move that happened faster than you guys moving here was the Coyotes to Utah. So
yeah, that was pretty quick.
Yeah.
So All right. Well, let's wrap it there. Again, we'll have Andrew on next week, and
I'm here every week.
Well, not you. Unfortunately, you will be here too. Yes. But yeah, we'll be back next Sunday, same time, same place. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast on Instagram and at Brian Fresh Ice. Get those questions in. We will see you next week.
Take care and comb your hair.